Hey, college sports fans, Clemson got a big SEC win that's been looking for this weekend. It was volleyball over the South Carolina Gamecocks. Uh, the day before that, not a win, not looking great, but not a total disaster, as I have put it before. And we will get into the keys to the loss to LSU for Clemson football and also some reasons for hope moving forward because this is just week one. Not a pretty week one. We'll get into it. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme Alway podcast, season 4.
I'm Daniel Shirley. I'm going to be surprisingly a lot more negative than you are. I think they've got major issues. I said that after the Georgia game last year. They went on and won the ACC title. They did lose 4 games. The 4 best teams they played beat them last year.
Yeah.
So, Bill, I think you know, again, I'm not down in the dumps Clemson fan because I remember the Ken Hatfield, Tommy West, Tommy Bowden era. I remember those years,
I'm not lumping
right?
Bowden in with those other two, but okay.
Well, I will. The best thing he did was hire Dabo Swinney, so
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. But I think we have to start to come to some kind of realization of, is last year the ceiling for what this program is now? Unless there's a change, and we'll get into that a little bit later, probably. We've gone through 2 years plus 1 game of, whenever they've played a really good defense, this is what the offenses look like, and very little productivity. Shutout in the second half. Had one good drive in the second half. Well, one and a half good drives.
Yeah.
The first drive of the second half, they looked good, and then they got down and just stopped.
Right.
You got to give LSU credit. I understand that LSU is a really good defense. The last drive of the game was a pretty good drive. In between that, Bill, nothing. And we saw that in the Pitt game last year, where they started strong and had 2.5 quarters of nothing. We saw it in the SMU game, where they started strong, got the lead, and then just stopped. And I have some serious doubts about the offensive staff. And I mean serious doubts about all of them, maybe outside of Matt Luke. But then his group didn't play well last night. And
Boy,
Dabo
they did
Swinney,
not.
right, to credit Chapel Fowler on Twitter, Dabo said, hey, they didn't none of them played well enough to win. And he's talking about the whole offense, but he's grouping in the offensive line with that. So I have some serious doubts about the entire offensive staff outside of Matt Luke. And look at it last night. The offensive line was not good. I think it was the second play, or maybe it was the third play of the offensive drive, or the first drive. LSU blitzes. Adam Randall runs right by the blitzer out into a pattern instead of picking up the blitz. And then Cade's scrambling for his life. And then there were drops again. And Bill, also, Cade Klubnik did not look like a third-year starter.
Not at all.
He looked like what he was his sophomore year, where he's always scrambling to the right when you don't need to scramble. The fourth down play at the end of the game, he drops out of the pocket and scrambles right into the defender. Now, that guy's a great defender. He's one of the best defenders in the country. But there was no reason for him to bail out of the pocket that fast. And he looked jumpy. He looked panicky. He looked jittery, whatever you want to use, words you want to use. And then I don't think Garrett Riley did him any favors with the game plan. I thought they bailed on the running game too fast. And I get it. The running game is a question this mark with that group of running back, or this year with that group of running backs. That's fine. Somebody's got to run the ball. And it can't be designed Cade Klubnik runs, because those aren't working.
He doesn't sell them.
No, he doesn't sell them, and they telegraph it.
Yeah.
They absolutely telegraph it. And then there was a play, and I believe this was Davidson's first play of the game. It might have been the second drive. They ran a play where his job was to block Perkins. who's one of the best defensive players in the country,
Right.
and you're going to block him with a true freshman running back?
Right.
That can't be in the game plan. So you've got to. It was just a complete failure on offense. To again credit LSU, that's probably the best defense Clemson's going to play all year. Maybe. If not, Clemson's in trouble.
Connect with us on social media. That's at Clemson Kickoff. Whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Facebook, you'll find us there.
We got it right on the list here that I brought up on the screen a little bit ago. 5 drives of 4 plays or less, and that is throwing out the window, taking a knee before the half, like not including that.
Right.
You go down the drive chart, and it's first of the game, 3 plays, and you punt. Next one is 4 plays. You get a field goal out of that because of the turnover. Then it's 8 plays and punt. Then it's 13 plays and a touchdown. Take a knee to end the half. We're throwing that out of the equation here. 8 plays and missed field goal, like you talked about. 2 plays and an interception. 3 plays and a punt. 8 plays, okay, but then you turn it over on downs. I did not disagree with the call to go for it there, by the way. 3 plays and a punt, and 7 plays, and you come up short going for the end zone at the end of the game, trying to tie it. Who knows? Maybe with all the going for it on 4th down, maybe they would have gone for 2 and just tried to spare overtime and see if you can get it there on your home field. But one thing I kept seeing and thinking honestly before I even saw it was what does Garrett Riley have to dial up? Like when have we ever looked in the red zone or on a key 3rd down or on a key go for it on 4th down when you have no choice? Where is that, wow, what a call.
Right.
What a play they drew up. What a play they dove into the playbook and dug out. I have not seen that in the era of Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik, and I do lump that together because there have been times when Klubnik has not called the play that was sent in. One thing that was really, really weird about after his final play, he's like looking at the sideline, like tapping his microphone. Oh, what is that thought? Like
Yeah.
after
Right.
after you have lost the game, what are you kind of looking in mystery and saying, "Hey, I can't hear you." I didn't understand that, but really had no bearing on the outcome of the game, I suppose. There's just a lot of question marks, I think, right now, and it reminded me of a lot like last year, where you and I were saying, "Hey, we need to see Cade Klubnik step up and elevate his game after a poor." First season as a starter, a lot of bad situational knowledge, sorry, bad situational execution based on that knowledge,
Yep.
a lot of issues. And then it came out against Georgia and just laid an egg. But then built a heck of a season that made me feel like I almost should have eaten my words about, hey, I had lobbied for a transfer who could run the dirt raid, right? Come in, have Klubnik watch it, not have Klubnik transfer out, not get rid of Klubnik entirely, but make that a part of his development. I was wrong. He developed very well as a quarterback last year, started doing things better, started stepping up in the pocket rather than run 7 yards straight back and then make things even worse and not even get outside the tackle box at times so he couldn't get rid of the ball. Last night, not much situational knowledge. There was a key 3rd down on one of those fourth quarter drives where he just dumped it off, and they needed either the full 10 or more. I can't remember exactly. Situational knowledge on my part. I'll admit it right there. Just dumped it off though, and there was no chance of run after catch picking up the full 10 yards and moving the chains. So just one example. Other times, not understanding when, hey, if I'm going to stay in the pocket and look for a guy and he doesn't get open, I've got to know when I've just got to get rid of it. And he got sacked because of that. He ended up ruining plays because of that. The NFL does not want to draft a guy where a lot of his plays that you look at on his film, he's kind of horizontal and he's kind of like, oh, let me just, and like, what is that even? Like you're not a freshman or a sophomore anymore. So that kind of thing's got to be drilled out. And a successful offensive coordinator who is a quarterback coach should have had that dealt with by now. That discipline should have been there. I think part of the reason for that is because there were so many developmental quarterbacks behind Klubnik. You've never been able to bench the guy. You've never been able to sit him after a bad play and say, look, you got to watch him doing what he does. And that's kind of not Dabo's way anyway. So, it came up to bite Clemson in the keister once again against LSU last night. I also want to get to 58 yards rushing, going back to they didn't establish the run. They did not attempt enough rushing plays. I don't know if that was a matchups thing where they just took a look and said, wow, O-line's not doing much. Because a lot of the times when Randall or Ezeamume got the ball, there was kind of no place to go. And I think we also saw that Randall is not much of a bounce out, cup back kind of guy. He's going to commit to the play that's been called. To his credit, that is your baseline. That's what should happen. But 58 yards rushing is not going to get it done all season long. So adjustments to be made there. And then let's move over. Oh, I'll skip to the number 5 item there. Klubnik, 19 of 38. 19 of 38 is also not going to get it done. That is not good enough accuracy. When he rushed that one interception because someone was coming down on him, thank you for getting the ball out before you can get hit. Unfortunately, he just lobbed it right at an LSU defender and nowhere near, I guess, intended receiver Cole Turner. I don't think he was trying to throw it away. Only 2 recorded sacks, but very many more pressures that you just looked and you said, hey, nothing doing, like you'd see Klubnik in a position where nothing could happen. So we need now to see that continued development, just like he put out on the field last year after a dud against Georgia. Got to do it again this year and start bouncing back this week against Troy. Let's talk about the defense. I think overall the defense looked much better. We'll get into that later. First of all, that vaunted Clemson defensive line, lack of sacks. It was Will Helt, the transfer who came through, had Dabo Swinney all excited. Very cool reaction where he's pointing at him and smiling. And then the DBs.
That was the one, right? That was one sack.
The one, yeah. And he just busted loose. And that looked a lot to me like Austin Bryant back in the day. That was how Bryant tended to get sacks. Hey, I've got my shot. It's my call. I'm going to run it down, and just knew when the quarterback wasn't looking and left Nussmeier no choice but to eat the ball. DBs, maybe because of that lack of pressure from the defensive line up front, there were a lot of open receivers in the secondary. Nussmeier was able to have a 28 of 38 completion percentage. The yardage was kind of reined in. We'll get into that later. I do think the defense looked fine overall and improved. I don't think the issues were as glaring as they were last year. A lot of work to do, though.
Yeah, a couple things. You remember, and I'll kind of lump a few thoughts here in together. You remember last week when we did our preview and I said whoever wins up front wins?
Yeah.
Well, LSU won up front.
Both sides.
Right. And, that is where everything starts is, okay, why was Klubnik so jumpy and jittery? He had guys in his face the whole night. Okay, that's fine. Why was Garrett Nussmeier so calm and collected? He had nobody in his face all night. Now, I do think they started to adjust to the running game in the second half, and they played better against the run in the second half, but LSU established the run, and that set up the pass. And how about let's stop calling it the dirt raid if you're not going to give the running backs more than 9 carries? I mean, come on. You can have your little cutesy monikers for all this stuff, but if you're not going to run the ball, you can't call it the dirt raid. I'm sorry. It's just stupid. So, no, I thought the defense was fine. I thought the defense played well enough to win. I think Garrett Nussmeier is the best quarterback in the country. You saw what an NFL quarterback looks like last night, and it's not the guy that was wearing the orange. He does not look like an NFL quarterback. Bill, he reverted all the stuff that we talked about 2 years ago. That's what he looked like last night. All the steps that he took last year after the Georgia game, but then reverted to against South Carolina and reverted to against Louisville. But for the most part, he was better. He looked like that last night. So, look, I think you can't get whipped up front like they got whipped up front on both sides of the ball and expect to win. And especially against a good team. Look, LSU might be great. They've got, again, I think he's the best quarterback in the country. Their defense is vastly improved over last year. Now, maybe it's the second year in the system, whatever it is. They figured out how to use Perkins. I can't believe it's that hard to figure out how to use him, but they know what they're doing with him now. Their DBs were great. Clemson's DBs were okay. They were good. Ashton Hampton, stop being so handsy.
Yeah.
But also, to go back to another point you made, and I know I'm jumping around here, it's because I'm furious about this stuff. LSU, remember the one drive they got in the red zone and they lined that 6'8" tight end up by himself? Who didn't know a lob was coming? Right to him. And what that is that's finding your advantage and scheming to that. And Garrett Riley does not do that.
Right.
There's no go-to play. Bill, there is no misdirection. There's no window dressing. I remember when Chad Morris used to be the offense coordinator, and they would use that phrase every Saturday on the broadcast. There's no motion. There's nothing. It's just, it looks like, hey, we're better than you, and we've got better talent, and we're just going to show it to you. And they didn't have the better talent last night. You've got to find something to make the defense uncomfortable.
Right.
And they didn't do that. And LSU did. Now, again, I do think Clemson's defense played well enough to win. I think Sammy Brown played great.
Yep.
I think Ronan Hannafin played great.
What a beginning for Ronan Hannafin.
Right.
As
right.
a full-fledged safety, right?
I think, is the scheme for Peter Woods not to have any tackles but to eat up the line of scrimmage so other people can make tackles? Maybe it is. If
well,
he
then
did,
let's see those other tackles.
Right. That's his job. That's their job, right? And I thought Stephon Green played pretty well.
I did too.
I thought TJ Parker was okay. Wasn't great. Didn't do, no sacks, right? So, but I don't know. I think Woodaz had a bad night. Just from my untrained eye, I thought Griffin played okay on the back end, especially after Barnes got hurt. But, where are some of these other guys? Look, I understand that Gideon Davidson's a true freshman. I get that. But, Bill, this feels like last year. Remember coming out of the Georgia game, we said, where's TJ Moore? Where's Brian Westcott?
Yeah.
And it's like they didn't play against Georgia, but then they break out after that. Maybe that happens with Davidson. But, I've just got so many questions. I feel, and you know how I felt about the defense the last 3 years. I feel way better about the defense than I do the offense. I think that the offense has huge issues going forward. The offensive line, I was wrong about them. Either they had a bad night against a pretty good defense, or I thought this really wrong. I thought with this kind of veteran group coming back, they had a chance to be a pretty good offensive line. And they looked lost last night.
Right.
They're missing assignments. The guys are just running free on the defensive line. I thought it was a complete offensive failure, I thought, last night. Now, one night out of 12, maybe they'll get it fixed. But you tell me that team that played last night is going to win the rest of its games against the way Florida State looked, against the way Georgia Tech looked Friday night, against the way some of these other teams have looked. Louisville, I don't see that coming. They've got some big changes or big things to fix if they're going to be that kind of a team.
Well, and I'll say this, and I already tweeted this. LSU, very talented team.
Yes.
I mean, we knew they shopped well in the portal. We didn't know how it would gel. Obviously, coordinators and position coaches on both sides of the ball made it pull together, made it work very, very well. Number two, very prepared, without a doubt. And I have zero doubt in my head that LSU defensive line prepared very well for what Clemson's offensive linemen tend to do and how they tend to run that system. I also have no doubt in my mind that the other side of the ball is the same way, that LSU offensive line prepared very specifically for how Clemson likes to run its defensive line. When you've got everybody coming back, you got a lot of tape on tendencies, you've got a lot of tape on scheme, you got a lot of tape on what players are good at and where you can maybe push them into a mistake. I think defensively, the way that shows is 72 tackles, 35 of them, Ronan Hannafin, a DB, Sammy Brown, a linebacker, Wade Wood as a linebacker, Avion Terrell, a DB. When you have basically half your tackles before you even get to the top tackler on the defensive line, who was Phylon Green, with Peter Woods right behind him, another 11 for the two of them combined. You got to have more stops up front than that if you're going to look to try to beat a team at the quality of LSU. So can that get fixed? I think it can. And no referendums here on one game. All right, we're talking about one game and one look, and it
Sure.
is going to be a much bigger season. That defense looked good. It didn't look uh, quite as energetic as I thought. I mean, they made big plays, which kept this team in the game, and they got very energetic when they had something to celebrate. Did they show that energy every down, every play, the way they? That's a fine needle to thread. Do you need Tom Allen on the field? Does Ben Boulware have that covered as linebackers coach? Do he and Nick Eason kind of have that energy sustained, or do they need that presence again? A lot of people talked about, hey, Wes Goodwin didn't bring the energy, didn't bring that verve, if you will, to the sideline. And everybody said how practice was very different this offseason with Tom Allen out there instead of Goodwin being much more like Venables. Do they need that on the sideline during the games? I'm not calling for an immediate change on that, but let's watch how that unfolds. After a bye week, do they make that change? After the first bye week, after the second bye week, do they do it at all? I'll trust them to figure that out. Let's get into a few things. Maybe that's a ray of hope that they have that in their hip pocket, right? That they could if they needed to. There are some other reasons. Just overall, like I said, this team did not play well. This team did not play the way that guys, individually are capable of playing. Played a very good team, very talented, very prepared, and barely lost. So you can work on these issues. It's just week one. You are going to have that opportunity to turn things around. This team did turn things around last year, and get on a roll. They'll have that chance to do that again. I think we've both talked quite a bit about the defense being clearly improved. I think those takeaways, those big plays, were able to partly offset those flaws, just like I mentioned. But you've got to be more consistent. When I texted you, and I also sent this text to another friend, and I said, is it just me? Are we getting outplayed more snaps than we're not? But the big plays are keeping this game close and keeping this team in the game. And my wife chimed in, well, what's wrong with big plays? Obviously, nothing is wrong with big plays. But when you're living on them, when you're relying on them, it gets down to crunch time in a close game, and you're the one who's only made a few plays and the other team has made a lot of plays, it narrows those odds of coming through at the very end. I'm gonna skip an item here, and I'm gonna get to safety because we've been talking about defense quite a bit. We said that was a very major question mark. We knew that Khalil Barnes was coming into this game less than 100%. Boy, did he look good out of the gate. Tweaked that injury again. Apparently, it's that hamstring. Kylan Griffin sure looks like he's on his way to a bounce back season and erasing the issues that he had as a sophomore. Ronan Hannafin seems to have developed. I saw some quotes where, he did get hurt during that game, but I saw him talking to media at the end saying, yeah, it's fine. It was a temporary thing. I'll be all right. Both looked really, really good. And I would say also Ricardo Jones, who I just didn't have room to get it on the slide, also looking improved.
Yeah, I was really pleased with Hannafin.
Yeah.
I thought he stepped up. I thought he did the job. The fumble, caused fumble. I mean, he was going to make the tackle in a way that it was going to be short of the first down. But Bill, LSU had the ball 37 minutes.
Yeah.
Clemson had the ball 22 minutes, which goes back to your point about the big plays. You have to sustain drives, and that helps your defense. You've got to get off the field. I mean, you've got to keep the ball a little bit to keep your defense off the field to rest a little bit. But no, look, I think there were some bright spots. It's not completely a meltdown, but I don't, how about let's just stop with all the talk, right? There's a lot of talk in the preseason the last 3 years about how great everybody looks. Well, if that was true, you wouldn't have lost your last 3 first game openers and 4 of your last 5. Maybe something's not working in the preseason. They've lost 4 of the last 5 season openers, and they haven't looked good offensively in those 4 games.
That's the thing of it.
right? I know the game against Duke, they ran up and down the field, but how many turnovers did they have?
Oh, but both ends of the
Rem-
field in the red zone was
Right.
terrible. The turnovers came in the worst possible places when you need to be protecting the ball.
But the other, remember the Georgia game where they scored 3 points?
Right.
The Georgia game last year where they did nothing offensively. Last night, nothing offensively. If you'd have told me, back to your point about the defense, and you and I talked about this. If you'd have told me that Clemson gave up 17 points to that offense, I said, well, damn, they won the game.
Yeah, purely.
You think about, again, I don't. It's not perfect, but if you'd have told me they would have held Garrett Nussmeier and those receivers to 17 points, yeah, they won the game. And I thought I thought the special teams were okay. I know that Hoosier missed a kick. It's a 48-yard field goal. I still don't think college kickers you can just say that's automatic.
Right.
It's not. It's not the NFL. It's still college kickers, right? So
It wasn't a duck hook that made you wonder who you could go get
it just
from,
right,
you
right.
know, their first pending job or something.
Yes. So I just this to me last night all goes back to the offense. I know that the defense, again, not great, but pretty damn good. And that's probably one of the best offenses they're going to face.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely the best quarterback they're going to face. I think he's going to end up being a top 5 pick.
Thomas
in the NFL
Castellanos
draft.
thinks more of himself, and
Well, that's true.
this week he can, I guess, right?
Yes, and he backed it up.
Yep.
But I if you'd have told me they were going to hold him to 17 points and that amount of yards, sign me up for that all day.
Right.
Because I thought the offense would do something. And that goes back to the offensive line. The offensive line didn't play well, and nobody else played well either. Name one guy on the offense who played well.
Well, no, and that's coming from
TJ Moore, maybe.
I don't know.
He ran the wrong route the one time.
Right.
It was clear he stopped that route. He wasn't on the same page with Cade on the one route.
Right.
Wesco dropping passes. The running backs missing pass protection. I know Adam Randall had that. That was a hard touchdown run on that short run.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I go back to the first drive where he runs right by the blitzer. His job is to pick that blitzer up. So, the offensive line was not good. I don't know what they were looking at. They looked confused, and I'm shocked in the second year under Matt Luke that they look like that, because I thought they would take a huge step forward.
No, I
Cade
agree.
didn't play well. Other guys did not play well.
Yep. And that affects so many things when your offensive line just comes out and doesn't get it done, right? And how many times did we see it during the Taj Boyd era, that once in a while that O-line just lays an egg and it blows all of it up. I mean, it's I have to say, that was always for me the big strike against Boyd, that he never really understood how to handle that pressure. There were a few games where he did it. The LSU 4th and 16 game, prime among them, but there were also a couple of injuries during that game that affected the pressure and kind of took some of that pass rush pressure away from LSU's arsenal, and gave Boyd room and space and just mental capacity, I think, to operate. And that's, really what we saw with Klubnik, I think, is a very similar thing to his assistant quarterbacks coach from his day, just not having that cognizant moment of, I got to do things differently because this ain't working. I got to shift gears. And it just didn't happen. And I think that sort of put a wet blanket over one of the areas where I saw hope, which was the tight ends. There wasn't much visibility to the middle of the field. You and I talk about passing lanes probably more than we should. And maybe, some will say, oh, that's not what that means. Fine, whatever. There was not much visibility to the middle of the field, whatever term you want to give it. But Olsen patt-henry with a very nice outstretched catch over the middle at one point, and then Bentoncourt catches a pass wide open, redshirt freshman, and just trucks a guy to grind out some extra yard after catch. I thought those guys both looked really good. Josh Sapp with a very key target and nice catch and picking up some yardage on the final drive of the game to try to get into position. So,
but Bill, haven't we been calling for the tight end to be used more for 5 years.
Yep.
Even with last year, I mean, it's like, why aren't they using them more?
And if you can't get to them over the middle, then where can you? Find the place where you can go ahead and put them to use. So I threw punter on there just because punter was such a huge question mark, and it turned out to be a non-factor. It was not a positive, but it also was not negative, and that was a negative that people clearly were worried about going into this. Fortunately, Troy is on the horizon. I don't keep up with the betting stuff, but I did see one tweet saying that it's the largest point spread quite some time at Death Valley for the Clemson Tigers. I'm not going to worry about that, but what it tells me is this is an opponent where things should be able to be worked on. I have long suspected that Coach Dabo Swinney likes to address the things and make the guys work through, meaning the players and maybe the coaches too, but make the players work through the things that they're not doing very well. I reference an old Louisville game where they were running the ball at will, but he kept making them work on the pass, and other games where it was the other way around. So I do expect that some of the things that they didn't figure out against LSU, you're going to see Clemson go right back at that tactic, right back at that deficiency, and start working on it. And maybe even against Georgia Tech as well. But that's going to be, I'm not as high on Georgia Tech's week one performance as you were, but I do think that's going to be a challenge at this point, looking at the results from those two games. So areas to expect improvement, but got to see it. They got to get out there and do it. And if anything's going to quiet all that preseason talk and make them worry less about how much to believe what people are saying about them and worry more about getting out there and doing something, boy, that LSU game ought to do it. And I know it's only a 7-point game. I know you can talk about how close it was, but let me tell you, got to be a wake up call if you dig under the surface. And I hope there's going to be some vociferous coaching looking through the tape.
How about, yeah, I'm with you. And how about let's stop talking about making a playoff run? It's week one.
Yeah.
How about let's talk about what did we do wrong tonight? Let's get it fixed. And stop worrying about whether or not you're going to be in the playoffs. That's not what this program has been built on. It's been built on focusing on this week and winning this week. And I don't want to hear about the playoffs in September and October and August.
You want to talk about playoffs?
You're not good enough to be talking about that.
Playoffs?
That team that played last night is not going to be in the playoff. So, I mean, you could see a couple of more losses on the schedule if you don't get your head straightened out. And one of those is next week. Georgia Tech is physical and they're confident, and Clemson didn't look physical or confident last night.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the stable of running backs at Georgia Tech did impress me when I watched that game. They complement each other's skills. You can use them situationally and differently, and they don't all have the same tendencies, and that's going to be an interesting challenge for this Clemson defense. So we will see how it goes. I'm not throwing up the white flag and saying end the season, but there's a lot to be done. So we will.
It's in my hand. I'm not throwing it up, but it's in my hand.
And by the way, if you reference some games coming up that are not going to be cakewalks, that are going to be big challenges. We talk about that in our ACC preview episode, and I think with the run up to the game and us posting it late, not a lot of views there yet. So you've got time during this non-conference week 2 matchup. You got a few days to go back and check that out as well. We'll break it all down, including Georgia Tech, which is coming up soon. So until our next podcast, whatever it might be about, I got a couple ideas. I'm doing a little research on both of them, and we'll see how that plays out. I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.